Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you all witnesses for joining us today. I especially want to thank Mr. Patrick Goggles for being here today. Mr. Goggles brings a vast knowledge and experience working on tribal housing. His resume is very impressive, currently serving as the Executive Director of the Northern Arapaho Tribal Housing Authority. Mr. Goggles formerly served in the Wyoming State Legislature and on the Northern Arapaho Business Council. Thanks so much, Patrick, for being here. And I want to thank the rest of our witnesses as well. The expertise on this panel is exceptional. In my state of Wyoming, we have two federally recognized tribes, the Northern Arapaho and Eastern Shoshone. Both tribes share the Wind River Reservation. The Wind River Reservation is the 7th largest American Indian reservation in size and 5th largest in population. Lack of safe, affordable, and available housing impacts communities across Wyoming, but especially on the Wind River Reservation. The housing gap has widened as the demand for housing is outpacing new construction. In many cases, as the chairwoman mentioned, multi-generational families are overcrowded in homes. These homes often have serious plumbing and electrical problems and are in dire need of repair. Congress has provided funding for Native American housing programs for several decades. Tribes and tribally designated housing entities use the funding for a range of affordable housing activities to benefit low-income tribal households. This includes developing new housing for rental or home ownership, maintaining and operating existing housing units, building infrastructure, and offering housing-related services. So I look forward to your advice and counsel on all of these issues. Additionally, I want to talk a little bit about the uniquenesses of working with Indian trust lands. On trust lands, the Bureau of Indian Affairs must process and certify mortgages issued by federal agencies and lenders. In some cases, the BIA has taken months to process mortgages. It creates particular problems in areas that have tribal trust lands available but don't have fee ownership land available. And that's why I've co-sponsored the Tribal Trust Land Home Ownership Act with Chairwoman Smith to create deadlines that BIA must meet for processing title documents. If you have other issues you want to raise about how that legislation could improve the delivery of services in this area, please let us know. I, along with several members of this subcommittee, are members of the Senate Community Development Financial Caucus. The caucus is a platform to address the needs of CDFIs so they have the resources to serve their communities. I believe CDFIs are a wise investment to multiply our federal dollars for maximum impact. So in closing, our witnesses today provide unique perspectives on the state of Native American housing, and I look forward to hearing your testimony. I thank you again for being here, and I am looking forward to learning ways to ensure tribal housing needs are met. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I yield back. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Goggles, you mentioned it took 6 years to work through and jump through all the hoops necessary to get your now September 2023 project to this point. Could you describe some of those hoops and how can we help cut that down, the amount of time?
Vice Chair Lummis, one of the areas has been the working relationship with the Bureau of Indian Affairs Realty Department. It took me approximately 2 years to master lease the subdivision meets and bounds of the survey that we did, plus 2 years of delay from the pandemic. So it took me about 4 years to obtain the leasing authority through the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Currently, they are understaffed. Yeah. There's only 2 people in the realty division at the Wind River Agency. So that's one of the challenges is getting the land. The other challenge is when we develop a project, infrastructure is always a 1/3 of our development costs. So at the Chief Black Hole project, $9.1 million total, $2 million is for infrastructure. and putting that infrastructure according to federal regulation, according to ONAP, HUD regulations under the Indian Housing Block Grant, under the Indian Community Development Block Grant, and the use of community facilities from USDA. Each one has its own set of regulations.
Yeah, that's so embarrassing.
So navigating these regulatory requirements requires experience, it requires training, like we were talking about, TNTA. Everybody's shop does their own thing. The third is environmental reviews.
Are those
you're going to-
houses on well and septic, or?
We're developing this project with domestic water, domestic wastewater, and drainage. Individual home sites use the septic system and cisterns when they're developing a unit out in the country, and there's 2.5 acres generally. What I've leased for a subdivision is about 20 acres for 20 homes. The cost is part of that. For the 10 units that I'm building that are 3-bedroom, $252,000 apiece. For the 10 4-bedrooms, $267,000 apiece. These are manufactured housing units.
Geez.
Yep.
And then it was earlier mentioned numbers like 600,000. I can't remember who said that. Was that?
That's in Alaska.
Oh, in Alaska.
In Alaska, just talking to my colleagues in that area, there are 2 seasons up there. That's the season that you play basketball, and the other is for getting your materials up there in a timely manner so you can construct a house.
Yeah.
So two very different methods of building, with the northern plains, Great Plains of our area versus Alaska. They're very, very different. In the Southwest, you'd find very different approaches as well.
Can you see ways that we could fold the programs you mentioned into one and streamline it?
Under the Indian Community Development Block Grant Program, we could make that program more flexible, that it could fund infrastructure. One of the areas that I'm working on is redevelopment of streets. They haven't been repaired or rebuilt since the time they were first put in by HUD. And now that I've taken over, I'm having difficulties just repairing streets. This last winter, we were using our monies to provide snow removal services because of a extremely harsh winter.
Extremely.
Extremely harsh winter. So under the Indian Community Development Block Grant, making that program more flexible. Under the Indian Housing Block Grant as well, we can use these funds to develop infrastructure and fund development at the same time.
What if you find a house that it needs plumbing and electrical upgrades and heating upgrades? Are there programs that are easily accessible to take care of those needs?
Senator Lummis, under our Indian Housing Block Grant, we repair and rehab and modernize housing. Some of the housing stock I have now is about 40 years old. So when you get into that house, you're going to repair electrical.
Yeah.
Because back 40 years ago, we didn't have the electrical devices we have now. And the houses need 2 bathrooms, not just one. Yeah. So you're looking at the modernization of houses so they have at least 2 bathrooms. In the case of the pandemic, you could quarantine a family in that type of a house with 2 bathrooms.
Yeah, good point.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Goggles. Appreciate it.
Senator Lummis, if you have additional questions you'd like to ask so you don't break up your flow,
Okay,
please
great.
go right ahead.
Thank you. Ms. Fish, what reforms do you think are necessary to improve NAHIC?
I just want to clarify, the National American Indian Housing Council?
No, I
NAHIC?
guess I have the wrong acronym. What is it? NAHASDA?
NAHASDA?
I'm sorry, I get the acronyms mixed up.
We simply need to get this legislation passed. That is the first grand step, is simply passing the legislation.
Okay. Mr. Upton, how are Native community development financial institutions providing support to prospective Native homeowners?
You know, first of all, I think they're being innovative with the products that they design, and also they're really focusing efforts in collaborative ways, statewide, regionally, by developing collaborations of native CDFIs. They provide support when it comes to native home ownership. That's where native CDFIs come into play.
And but do they work on tribal trust lands, or can it only work on fee land?
No, the most successful, I was just up in South Dakota last week, and this was interesting, of the 86 related homes, loans that were closed last year totaled $7 million in South Dakota. CDFIs made up 85% of the lending. And those were acquisitions, 39 homes, 9 homes were newly constructed, and 7 were interim construction, and then 24 rehabs. But native CDFIs made up the lending portion of that. 85% of it came from native CDFIs.
Thank you. And then a quick question for Ms. Moreland. Do you find there is data available to accurately determine housing needs on and off the reservation?
I believe that there is a start, at least in Minnesota, for collecting the data. Minnesota has worked with the Wilder Research, and they do a reservation-specific survey. And this is the year that we're doing it. We're going to be doing it towards the end of this year, and we will be able to collect that data. We've been working with Wilder since about 2006, and so we do have some data that is available. One of the innovative things with the data that we collect with Wilder is Wilder has respected tribal sovereignty, and the data that is collected is owned by each tribe, and the tribe will decide how they would like to disperse that information and use that information. So it's not data that's being collected by non-natives used in a non-native way. The tribes own their data.
Okay, thank you. And this question is for anyone who wishes to weigh in. Are there special programs for Native American veterans to obtain housing, and who administers those, and how are they working? Ms.
Thank
Fish.
you for the question, Senator Lummis. Yes, there are programs that allow access to housing for Native American veterans. One bill that is out there right now that was introduced by Congressman Tom Cole is the Tribal HUD VASH, which is a result of a demonstration program allowing vouchers to be used for the subsidization of housing for veterans, and it has worked very well. And we're looking at in the future being able to transition those into home ownership as well. Another program that allows for veterans for home ownership and purchase is run out of the Department of Veterans Affairs.
Veterans Affairs, okay.
Could I comment on that one?
Yes, please, and then
Okay.
I'll yield back.
Okay.
Thank you.
The other bill that I think that really needs the support is the Native American Direct Loan Improvement Act, which there would be, it's the Senate Bill 185 as part of the 5 veteran bills that went to the floor on April 26th of 23 and unfortunately failed. But it would create $5 million of relending program that would allow Native CDFIs who intimately understand Native communities and the mortgage lending process on tribal trust properties to obtain a loan through the Native American Direct Loan Program at 1% interest, and allow veterans to use the program to refinance non-VA mortgages so that Native veterans have the same opportunity as non-Native veterans to use their VA benefits to refinance existing mortgage loans. So that one would be extremely important to pass.
Thank you, witnesses.
Thank you very much.